This is episode 12 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast with Anthony Parasini and James Kelly. In this episode, we discuss the first race of JK's High Rocks season coming up this weekend in Sydney, Australia. After that, we just talk a little bit back and forth about coaching styles, things we do, and what we'd like to see in the season. If you'd like to join us, you can find us at The Hybrid Engine or jk.hybridcoaching. Let's make hybrid fitness work for you.
There's a hybrid, right. Yes.
All right, here we go again. Ready?
Take two.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. I'm here with JK. First thing we're going to talk about, since we're going into this, not a clear objection of what our topic today is going to be. We don't know whether we're going to continue Threshold or keep going, but you guys will know listening because it'll be in the title of the video. I want to start out the call today, JK, with you got Sydney coming up for you tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah. Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about Sydney.
Yeah, exciting, mate. I'm excited to kind of, in my eyes, it's to, kick off the season, which will be fantastic. And yeah, there's a lot of hype down under here, with respect to High Rocks now, because it's, to me, I hate saying this, but we're always like about a year to 18 months behind the 8 ball, and that's where that's why High Rocks is kind of just starting out here in Australia. So yeah, there's a lot of hype. I think there's 6,000 athletes racing tomorrow, so it's a big event. So yeah, no, it'll be good. Feeling good.
I'm just curious. This got me thinking. Here it's kind of the lull of the season. It's the summer. It's hot. There's not a lot of races happening right now. Like the next North American race isn't until October. So we're 2.5 months out. And that's in Toronto. And then you have another month and a half-ish, 5 to 6 weeks after that before you get any of the US races. So we're away from races here, but down there in Australia, you guys are in the thick of it. You've already had Melbourne. Next up is Sydney this weekend. And then you guys are going to be having Brisbane, right? So yeah. What's the attitude down there in Australia like with High Rocks? Like, you guys kind of in full swing now.
I think to answer that firstly, I think because it's new, that there was 2 races here last year. But because it's new, a lot of athletes and a lot of fitness enthusiasts are still are still understanding the sport, are still understanding how to train for it, how to what it is, so on and so forth. Which, to be fair, everyone still is as well. But what I'm getting at there is I think after this year with obviously Melbourne 3 weeks ago, Sydney tomorrow, Brisbane in 4 weeks, and then there's Perth. I think a lot of other people will have a bit more of an understanding of how to what the sport actually is, or what the race actually is. I'll be quite honest with you. I think a lot of people still down here don't understand that it's a running race and then some others, if that makes sense. It's and the reason why I say that is because the amount of compromised, the amount of athletes that I see just doing compromised work all the time is just fascinating still, which is fine, which is great, which is you need to go through that to understand, right? But yeah, like like it's taken off. Like there's so many people talking about it now, and everyone's like doing it, which is
It's
fantastic. But I think it's just naturally just going to. It's just the understanding of what the actual race is the most important thing, and that'll just happen over time.
Yeah, and it's still growing, and they've uh, they've got a lot of people trying to figure it out still. One thing
Yeah.
I like to do is I like to go in and look at our analytics for this podcast, and so excluding YouTube because this doesn't show that, but it shows us across all of our other streaming platforms. Our biggest audience is in the United States at 31%. Our second biggest audience is in the UK at 28%, but our third biggest audience is Australia at 18%. So
Very good.
I
I need
think,
to get that up a little bit
yeah,
more.
I think the growth of the sport itself down there will grow everything that's happening around it down there. Not
Yeah.
just the sport, but the sport as it is. We've taken a look at the Sydney map, and it's kind of got that little pinch point, and it's got that U-turn. Um, Interesting map to say the least. Doesn't look very
Mm.
conducive to a really fast course. So you're going out there and you're racing not on a grid format. So that's going to be pretty interesting. First race of the season, and you're going into it not tapered. So
Yeah.
you've taken zero taper this whole week. You're fully training. And so, what are some of the reasons behind that we've talked about that we aren't tapering for it?
Well, the most important thing to understand is that like it doesn't matter that I'm right. Like my fitness overall doesn't matter that I'm racing on the weekend, right? Like if I'm and you as my coach, Anthony, if we're doing what we're doing to try to just week in, week out, get 1% fitter or 1% stronger or 1%, just have this like approach to fitness that um, is it's all about consistent small progression. Then we decided that we didn't need to taper for this week. It's not an A race for me. It's definitely not an A race. It's saying it's not even like somewhat of a like an important race at all because um like grand scheme of things for myself, like I'll be looking at Brisbane to be a bit more of a important race for me in a month's time. But then also, like, we'll understand the majors soon, which will be more important. So where I'm getting at here is that the reason why I haven't tapered is because, well, I want to see what my body can do with a full week of training. And to be frank, and I don't want to sound um, too uh, not egotistical, but like tomorrow's race is like nothing compared to like a normal Saturday training anyway. So yeah, like what are your thoughts on that then? Like obviously being my coach.
Well, just talking about it. So you went in, it's not an identified, like, here's our A race, right? This is not the race that you're going to go out and like probably have your best performance, but it's raising your floor up that we've talked about. So we're establishing a baseline level. You've raced twice, right? Like Cologne and then Worlds, and then making sure that like before you don't have to peak to get to that level, right? So making sure that hey, here's my baseline. My baseline is going to be a I don't know, 56, let's call it, because that's what you ran last time. So if baseline's 56, then if I sharpen up, it's a 54, right? So
Mm.
whatever it is. Now that's super course dependent. Numbers, the actual times are not going to be like that. But that's a way to approach it. Now, you are going into Sydney after specifically your off season was not off season, but like out of competition season was basically just, I'm going to run that half marathon. You know, you took a little 2 weeks, you got really antsy, you moved back to Australia. That's a lot of stress. So, like, there's a month there after Worlds where it's like your body went through different stressors, more stressors. And then now you came out of it. You went into the Gold Coast half marathon. You PR'd it. You you were happy with your time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now you're like, okay, I'm more confident with these out of season races, and let's see how that applies. Now you're not going to be as sharp. So, like, basically what that means is there might come, if you get a curveball thrown at you in the middle of the race, like, you're the handle on the skier breaks or something happens, or the rower, like if something goes bad, the sandbag starts leaking, whatever it is, you won't be as well adapted to move right now, and that's okay. Um, versus you're not specifically prepared for a high rocks race. You just have a lot of general fitness,
Yeah.
and we're going to switch right after this because like we've talked about, we're treating Sydney as a simulation race. It's your sim race before Brisbane, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's also dependent on what the course comes out looking like. If it comes out like terrible, it's going to be okay. Well, we're just going to be another sim race for whatever the first major is. And when that's released and announced, we can determine the timeline to lead into that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Take
but
me like,
yeah,
sorry, you go and I'll when you finish.
so we spent about a month and a half now, basically just letting your body reset and building base. You haven't had anything that's super intense. You haven't gotten to the intensity of the race since Worlds, which is what,
No.
6, 7 weeks ago. So we've trying to reset you a little bit, and you'll feel something sharp this weekend. You'll have that memory go in you for 3 weeks down the road, which is Brisbane.
So like on that then, right? You use the word peaking or peaking, like peaking for an event. I actually spoke about this to my athletes just then. Like, what's the question? Like, I personally like have understood that like if I can limit the whole type of kind of concept of my peaking for a race because only because that because I am I've got this floor of fitness already. Like, um, I'm just going to be a consistent, well-rounded athlete, 24/7, 365 days of the year. Now, I don't know my question here, but like, what's your like concept of the word peaking?
So when you peak for something, you're trying to get the most out of yourself. You're trying to set yourself up in the best way possible for success, right?
Yeah,
Um, One of the things I like to say is if you have a broad enough base, your peak can go really high. But once you get to that peak, why don't we just try to plateau it, right? If you have a peak, you
that's
can
what I'm trying to
plateau it
say. Yeah,
and
yeah,
try to like build that fitness underneath of it as time goes on. So instead of being a peak, it's just another, like, mountains have several peaks before you get to the top. So we're just going
yeah.
up, and instead of coming down, losing everything you've put into the last year, the last several weeks and all this stuff, why do that? Why not, like, hey, look, I'm going up and I want to like hold, not necessarily hold, but like keep this level of fitness I've developed, you don't have to drop off. You don't have to lose anything. You don't have to do that. You can like just a math equation, instead of having an upward angle and then back down, why not like get the area under the curve the best as possible. So you're steadily incline, you know. Over time,
I'm
that's the
just
best way to go.
I'm just laughing because I remember and you'll remember this, the week after Worlds, I was messaging you because I was on a cruise, and obviously the week after Worlds, it was more of a deload week and kind of a week to kind of get more so mentally like um back to equilibrium. And remember I was messaging you saying like am I gonna like am I gonna lose my fitness? Like I was kind of like scared that I was just gonna lose everything that I had built. And that's the thing, like that's what I don't like about the whole concept of peaking, because when you peak or use the word peak, it's like, well, the only thing you can do afterwards is you have to come down. And I don't like that. Like I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's like in my head, Anthony, it's like, nah, yeah, I'll I'll peak for events coming up, but I'll more so dial into the event,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh,
Um,
you can sharpen up for it, whatever you want to call it.
sharpen up,
I
sharpen
don't
up.
know if I've
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I've said this on our podcast yet before or explained it to you. Did I tell you how I'm a geotechnical engineer. That's where I come from. I play in the dirt and the mud. So instead of talking about like, I know how foundations are built for buildings, right? But I don't like that analogy of like building a foundation for a building because there's a lot of stresses that act differently. But if you think about fitness, instead of like building a building, but spiraling down into your fitness the best you can, think about digging a giant pit, right? I want to dig a humongous hole, and the deeper I get, the better I'll be, right? The more volume I can fit into that hole, right? Because the deeper it goes, the wider it goes, um, the more capability I have. So I want to get to a certain level. Well, one of the best ways to dig a pit, there's something called angle of repose that like dirt, sand, whatever it is, mud, clay, everything has given enough time, it goes to a certain angle. Different sands can be like 45 degrees, 30 degrees, whatever it is, but it'll be a smooth line. That's why you see like sand sloping down into lakes and things.
Yeah.
But if you're digging a hole, you can dig a vertical line and then a bench, and then a vertical line and a bench. And you can make this step down gradual into this giant pit. And if you ever talk to a geologist that's studying a fault line, that's how they look at it. Okay. If I want to make my hole bigger to go deeper, what I do first is I widen the top of it. The bigger the top is, the deeper I can go. So if you imagine this being like your easy work, your zone 2, your capillary bed building, the bigger that is, the deeper I can go. The next level, there's your threshold, there's your like anaerobic stuff, and then or anaerobic threshold, right? That would be that level, top to bottom, and that you want to be in there. Now, you first have to dig the big opening, then you come back, you cut in the sides, and you dig the next level, which has to be a little bit smaller because you can't
Yeah.
have it the same width. So you have to have a bigger vo uh, volume at the top, a little bit smaller in the middle, and you can get down. Now, if you ignore some of that stuff, like that's in the bottom, when I start digging that big top out, right? If I've built this hole and I'm like, okay, I've got to this point, I want to get more fitness. I don't just fill in my hole and start another one. But what I do is I start digging around the outside. Now, what happens is stuff sloughs into that bottom, right? It starts to fill in on its own, or there's spillage down into that hole. I can go in there once or twice a week or every other week, dig a little bit of it out though, right? It doesn't have to be perfect and clean. I can still get pretty low, but I'm still working on the upper portion, which also sloughs in the middle. But I can go dig a little bit of that out. Then I go to the middle portion. Then finally, when I'm ready to peak for an event, I just go grab the little bit that fell into the bottom so I can get back to that deep part that I want to get to. And I can keep going deeper now. The wider my hole get, the more levels down I can go. Uh,
Mm.
that's a little convoluted method, but it helps me. And so if you think about it, like going that way, you've spent a lot of time the last several weeks expanding the pit you're going to go in. You've even built that middle layer, like that you've cleaned it up. So the little bit that we're scooping out of the bottom the last few days, and then especially using the event Sydney um, as a training session, basically, but
Yeah.
a sharp training session. You're going to scoop the rest of that out so you can have it yourself, your fitness and everything ready for the next event for Brisbane.
Mm. Does that does that concept, is that just when you say, you know, the whole, digging and using, like, making sure the hole starts with a wider base at the top, is that just for cardiovascular fitness, or for is that for for pure strength and pure power?
So
Or you know where I'm coming from? Is it like fitness on a respiratory, like respiratory, like cardio, or is it everything?
yeah, it'd be mostly your cardio endurance, maybe some of your like stamina and stuff. Uh,
Stamina, yeah,
but
yeah.
but really, like if you talk about strength, it can be that too, but it would be like this is your technique base. Like how good are you at these levels? And if you want to get to that like peak performance of your strength, you have to be really, really good with only a barbell. You have to be really, really good like in your movement patterns and everything. So it would include like your mobility and your balance and your other things, and your coordination would be that opening of the pit. And then the
Well,
second layer
yeah,
would be like those middle weights. Can you hit those? How's your strength, your speed, your power? And that's when you talk about weightlifting that way. And then that very bottom layer would be your total overall strength. Like you can get it deeper the 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 bigger those other pieces are. I mean, you can apply
yeah,
it to
gotcha.
anything really. It's just an analogy. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah. No, because, like, I obviously, as a coach myself as well, and obviously doing what I'm doing, like, I have moments during my day. It's normally when I'm like doing a workout, Anthony, that you've obviously programmed for me. Like, I always kind of get to a point where I'm always thinking about what is this workout doing for my fitness, and what type of fitness is this workout trying to develop for me, if that made sense. And I'm like, okay, if it's a I'm just gonna say, like, if it's a back squat EMOM, right? Obviously that's a more of a strength element. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm assuming we talk about this analogy for fitness. I'm assuming it's the same. Well, similar concept when it comes to strength building and strength and what like strength endurance, strength stamina is all kind of in the same funnel as well, right? So the reason why I'm so curious is just because, like, when I'm training, mate, I just go down the rabbit hole of, okay, like, I wonder why this is here, and I wonder what this is doing for my fitness. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, I mean, one of the things I do a lot because just in my own practice, Lauren never lets me get away with just throwing a workout in or adding volume for volume's sake. Like basically one of the first things I learned from her is time is precious, right? So why like you can't throw in those extra workouts. And so she'll always question me. I'm very used to it at this point. Like, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? Does this make sense for me to do? Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I go about and think, well, what is the reason to have her do this workout or that workout? And there has to be a reason behind it. Like, okay, we're trying to build your total strength. We're trying to build your muscular endurance. we're working on movement specific patterns, or this is just general fitness. You need to go hard here or soft here, or you need to just get this load in because you're missing 30 reps of this movement for this day, um but nothing is like unintentional, right? You don't want
Yeah.
anything that's one of the things I don't like to do with her, with anybody, is this is a mental building workout, right? You guys have enough of that in everyday life. You're athletes. Like, if you can't get to that point mentally, um, one, I don't want to use up like your ability to do that in a training session. Like,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
the uh events are for. That's why we do out of competition or out of season events too. Like, I love that you go and ran a half marathon. If
Mm.
there's other events you want to do, I'll never stop you from doing them, because you can have that competition. You can use your fitness any way you want. We go do out of season events all the time, and not because just they are fun. It's fun for us to go do that, but because they're helpful. They're training sessions. They are not going out just to. We're not tapering for any of these things that out of the season, right? They're in
Yeah.
the middle of our training work. Basically, they're just the Saturday event that we're going to go do, the Sunday event, whatever it is. We've
Mm.
ran a half marathon, a trail 10K, and a Spartan. Lauren's ran a Spartan race too. Like, we go out and do these things because they're important, because you don't push yourself in training to that level.
No.
So if you need an intensity piece, and they're not very often, we don't do these intensity pieces all the time, but if you need one, sign up for a race. There's your intensity piece.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if somebody's asking, like, well, when do I add it? Why would I do that in the off season? It's like, well, it's not all the time. You go do it every second, third, or fourth week or whatever. But you need it sometimes. You need to go clean out the bottom of the hole, right?
Yeah.
Just every once in a while, to get all the other stuff so you have a clean area to work in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
absolutely one thing we like to do.
Mm. Mm.
So we're 26 minutes into this, and I'm not sure if we've actually settled on a topic besides just talking about what
Yeah.
what our own, like, I don't know what you'd call this, but that analogy, just how fitness goes. So maybe that's what it is. But to get a little bit into what the way I see it, um, is that Hyrox is highly dependent on your cardiovascular and like respiratory endurance, and your stamina. If you want to compare it to, we'll just go over. CrossFit has its 10 cardiovascular, respiratory endurance, stamina, strength, flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, balance, and accuracy. Those are the 10 components of fitness according to CrossFit. If you go back and look, Mintra has a video where she talks about, I believe it's 7 or 8 fitness fitness components that
Finance. Yeah.
that she talked about, and hers were pushing, pulling, squatting, lunging, bending, rotating, and locomotion. So 7. Um, and so just how do they compare against each other a little bit? And yeah, we'll give a little. Why don't we give a little sneak peek here? I think it'll be all right. If you guys are on YouTube and can watch the video, or if you're on Spotify and can watch the video right now, just pulled up a little circular graph that we made showing where we think CrossFit versus High Rocks and the levels it depends on, right? So if I was going to tell you, and it's not High Rocks versus CrossFit or hybrid fitness, I position this more as hybrid fitness, not necessarily High Rocks, but hybrid fitness and all the events we compete in. If I ask you cardiovascular and respiratory endurance, which one is higher? Which one requires more of that specific skill? Would it be
Mm.
CrossFit or hybrid fitness?
Hybrid fitness.
That's what I have too. And I actually have that considerably higher. So in terms of um, the gaps between them, that would be the biggest gap that I see. Uh,
The thing
Stamina.
about that though, Anthony, sorry to interrupt, but like that's the thing about CrossFit is that you don't know though, because you don't know if like the event that you're going to on the weekend, you don't know until you get there that you might be doing a mile run for the first event, or does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, Question for you. Is a
Hmm.
mile run going to be a long endurance event?
No, no, correct. All
So
right, a 5K run or a 4.66.
so yeah, they don't know that, but when you get to the CrossFit Games, at that point, because you got to specifically look at like the semifinals and the games. At that point, when they get there, are they testing which weightlifter can run the fastest, or are they actually testing like who's really good at this and that?
Yeah, okay.
Uh,
Yeah,
so for just for reference, at the games last year, if you they had that 5K run, which whether you believe it or not, everybody came out and said it was actually a 4.5K, which is like
mhm,
2.8 miles versus 3.1. So maybe you add a minute and a half ish to their times, which makes the best 5K person there run over 18 minutes, like 18:20 or something like that, right? So if that's the best person's 5K, what how many people in High Rocks, the general populace of people that run High Rocks can almost beat that. So it's not
yeah,
like they were the fastest person. They're not anywhere close. They're just for a reference, the Olympic qualifying time for a 5K is is like something in the 14s, I think. Like so
yeah.
fast, you know.
Low
It might even be
14s,
30, it might even be
I
30. I
would
might be
say.
off. I think it's actually maybe 13s, like low 13s, high
Yeah.
12s. Like so fast. So if you were to say of people that actually run, were they in the top 80% of people that run, not like whole population,
Yeah.
right? No, they would not have made an Olympic qualifier. And I don't expect them to. That's very specific, a very deep sport. But if you go look at it on the other side, if you go look at their strength numbers, every single person that made the games in their weight class would have qualified for the American Open, which is the equivalent level of an Olympic qualifier in weightlifting, right? So if they
Yeah.
all could qualify for the American Open in strength, means that think about how high of a level that is
Mm.
versus their running ability, which is not an Olympic qualifying level, not even close. It's actually over 30% slower than the Olympic qualifying times. So if you just think about it like in that way, it's heavily skewed towards strength, which is why, if we go back to the graph here, the strength portion, the CrossFit is way ahead of uh, High Rocks or hybrid
Yep.
fitness, but it's not all the way because I didn't put it as big of a difference simply because you still have to have some strength ability in hybrid fitness and High Rocks, you know, and you still have to have some cardiovascular respiratory endurance, but only compared to your peers in CrossFit. Stamina, how well can you hold? I'd say the people at the games actually have to have higher stamina than your general CrossFitter because they're usually competing over 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
While in High Rocks, stamina is very important because you have to have that staying power. One thing we might,
Staying power. Yeah.
one of the things we might get into is the aerobic power, right? And we'll talk about that in a later episode, but actual aerobic power and the gap between your highest ability and your highest sustained ability. And then
Mm.
flexibility on these other ones, just to go through these real fast. The flexibility, I would say, is in favor of CrossFit. You don't have to have great flexibility to be a hybrid athlete or to compete in High Rocks, but you do have to have really good flexibility for your Olympic lifts and your other strength
Yeah.
stuff, especially not to get hurt, and the strongman stuff in CrossFit. Power, they're going to be more powerful
Yeah.
overall, just their ability to produce power, but you can't have no power being a hybrid athlete. Speed. Speed is the ability to minimize the cycle time of a repeated movement, or in this case, that could be repeated movement, could be running, it could be rowing, it could be skiing, right? It could be moving a barbell repeatedly. But compared to their peers, they have to be high, but not high in general. Whereas overall speed and movement patterns matter much more in hybrid fitness and CrossFit. And
Yeah.
other things, I'd say coordination and agility. They're actually CrossFit athletes. I'd say the games athletes in the Elite 15 at least, and High Rocks are probably tied. They probably have to have the same level of agility and coordination as each other in order to uh, participate at such a high level in their sport.
Yeah.
Balance, I believed, went towards the CrossFitters, and if you, that's defining balance as the ability to control the placement of the body and the center of gravity in relation to its support base. So that's because of their gymnastics. They have to have a higher capacity of gymnastics in order to
Absolutely.
compete in what they do. And then in
Yeah.
accuracy, neither one requires a ton of accuracy, uh, but due to the precision of the wall ball target in a high rocks or in other hybrid sports, the precision of having to hit a precise target, CrossFit doesn't have anything like that. They can hit their target, just which is usually above the line in a wall ball, not having to hit a small sensor. So having to be precise gives a small edge to hybrid fitness and high rocks.
Yeah.
I just thought I
Yeah.
should.
Yeah, I love that, Anthony, and I think we should dive deeper into those uh what did you say, the principles of fitness at
Yeah.
some point, because yeah, it's so interesting, and then like giving examples of what um as you just said, for the accuracy component in either a high rocks race or a hybrid fitness event, and what that means, and then how to train for that. I think it's
Mhm.
really important, because the most important thing that I try to do, and I know you do because you are my coach, but I try to do this as a coach, is to give people the understanding. And you illustrated it before about not just throwing in workouts for the sake of workouts, or for the sake of volume. Like, I continue to question my athletes to give me more feedback, because I want them to understand why we are doing things. And that's the most important thing, is the understanding. It's not the actual workout itself, or to get this done, or to get this high volume day done. It's for you as the athlete listening to this to understand why.
Yeah.
Um, so
One thing you brought
well,
up there
yeah,
uh, is the tracking of the workouts, and I'm going to tell you that one of my one of my favorite things, and one of the reasons that I actually love to coach coaches. So you and my wife Lauren, uh, Zara, and Kate, like you guys are all coaches, right? I love coaching coaches, and the reason being is because you understand that the importance of giving the feedback and giving the tracking. Like you know that if you want me to give you the best, I need that information back.
yeah,
Because I'm sure, and I've had this happen before, I've had other athletes that don't record it. They don't give you the feedback. They don't tell you like what's going on. And then you're just kind of left in the dark to assume that either it's not getting done, or they're embarrassed about it or something, or that everything's going to plan. And so you don't know what direction to take the training and the program and the like you're coaching to. So it's really difficult that way. And I love coaching coaches because you understand that the feedback you give me is very important to
yeah,
to success for you going forward.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
um I hope you like are able to tell your athletes that you know, I the more you give me, the more I can give you.
correct. Yeah, yeah, mate. Yeah, no, great. And we might wrap it up, and it's a topic, as I just said, we should discuss even more so around the whole components of fitness and stuff. But for those of you who are watching and listening, thank you so much. Send me a message if you want to talk about training or your high rocks and hybrid journey. JK hybrid coaching on Instagram.
Yeah. And guys, we really appreciate it. If you could leave any reviews, you can ask us questions or comments. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment on the videos. You can write it in a review and let us know. Those things will really help pump out the program, or the not just the programs, but the what we're trying to teach through this podcast, as well as you can get in contact with us on Instagram and ask questions there. And JK or I would be happy to answer. If we get enough questions, we can do a whole episode of your guys' questions, which
Yeah,
I'd love to be able to do that. Every other month or once a month eventually, if we get enough people asking questions of us, or if you have a topic you'd really like for us to share, go ahead and please send that our way, as well as hit that like, subscribe, comment, leave a review, whatever you can do to help us. Thank you. We appreciate it.
thanks, guys. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening today, everybody. If you would like to be coached by James Kelly, visit him on Instagram at jk.hybridcoaching or look him up on the Fitter app. If you'd like to be coached by me, Anthony Parasini, or my wife, Lauren Weeks, visit The Hybrid Engine on Instagram as at The Hybrid Engine, or you can visit me at A Wild Parasini. You can also visit our website, thehybridengine.com. Additionally, you can find James Kelly as James Kelly and Georgie Vesley on YouTube, or you can find The Hybrid Engine on YouTube, or this podcast is available in video form also on YouTube as The Hybrid Coaching Podcast. Thank you again for listening, and we hope that you'll tune in next week for the next episode of The Hybrid Coaching Podcast.